So yeah, I'm here to talk about Peace Corps today. So my name is Tilly. I am a recruiter based in Denver, and I did my Peace Corps service in Costa Rica. And I did the community economic development sector. A little bit more about my experience. So I served from 2016 to 2018. And like I mentioned, did my service in Costa Rica in a very small coffee farming community down south. I marked it on the map so you can see it up there. I did a few different projects during my service, which I will jump into, but overall, really, really loved my time abroad. Found it personally and professionally fulfilling and rewarding. Up in the corner there is my host family, who I only had to live with for 6 months, but ended up living with them for the entire 2 years. Just really loved them and got along, and yeah, wanted to stay with them. Did a lot of different activities with my host mom, including making tamales, picking coffee, tons of fruits and vegetables where I was living. So did a lot of kind of exploring out there with my host dad as well. And in the lower corner is a group of young girls. We did a camp called Camp Glow, and it's a female empowerment camp. And we did that with 2 different groups of high school girls. So a little bit more about Peace Corps. We have kind of a 3-tiered mission. First and foremost, our goal is to provide training and capacity building for countries and communities that have requested our services. We never enter a community or a country without them asking for us to be there, and every volunteer works really closely with a community leader, which I think is really important, not only for the sake of promoting world peace and friendship, which is the utmost goal, but also ensuring that all of our projects and programs are sustainable and long-lasting. And the second and third goal kind of go hand in hand, which is really a cultural exchange between U.S. citizens, Peace Corps volunteers, and the countries and communities that we're working with. So Peace Corps, we really don't have a ton of requirements. You have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to be at least 18 years old. 95% of our volunteers have at least an undergraduate degree, but we do have a few positions that accept 5 years of experience in lieu of that degree. So for someone who's had, been in the workforce for several years and looking for a new opportunity, they can qualify for some certain positions. Before everything changed with COVID-19, we had about 7,000 volunteers working abroad who have all been brought back home until the climate changes with things abroad in the countries that we're working in. And since the inauguration of Peace Corps in 1961, we've had over 200,000 volunteers that have served. We offer a few different programs that volunteers can work in. About 40% of our volunteers are in the education sector, 20% in health, and then the rest have about 10 to 12% of volunteers working in them. Education by nature is our biggest program, teaching English. We also have math and science teaching positions. And then, we really like to stress the secondary projects that we offer, which is working on projects and programs and activities that are in line with the volunteers' interest and the community's interest as well. So like I was saying, I did my service in the community economic development sector, but I did plenty of English teaching, did the female empowerment camp, which are kind of just things that we saw a need in the community, and work closely with community leaders to make those things happen. So like I mentioned, every volunteer does get paired with a community partner. My community partner was a 15-member women's group who had a rural tourism initiative that they needed some help with, their organizational capacity, finance training, and marketing, and just a little help in creating a direction and a plan for their big project. So sometimes a lot of the people that we're working with might not have extensive education. For example, most of the women that I was working with stopped going to school after elementary school. So they really, you know, and living in a rural area, there's certainly a lack of resources and education, since everything is very based in the city, especially in Costa Rica. So as a volunteer, we're really acting as kind of mobile resources and education resources that are bringing these tools to the communities that we're working with. So while I was there, we did a few different workshops on how to track financials, use a computer, creating short and long-term goals, as well as marketing using Facebook and different social media tools to market their tourism destination. We also did a few different grants. One of the grants that we did, we built a cabin. So we got a $5,000 grant to build them a cabin that would allow them to cater to tourists that were coming either from different locations in Costa Rica or international tourists. And we also got a smaller grant. They had a farmer's market, and even with $700, allowed them to buy a freezer, increase their production, their organization, and just get a few different tools that made them more efficient. So in Peace Corps especially, a little can go a long ways. Like I mentioned, that Camp GLOW, which stands for Girls Leading Our World, I actually did that with a fellow volunteer in her site, and we brought the girls group to the farm on their last day for graduation. So it was a really fun thing to kind of bring the two different projects together. Some secondary projects, English camp, English classes. Peace Corps itself offers a few different opportunities for volunteers to get involved in leadership groups and committees, and maintained a blog for the whole 2 years that I was there, which allowed me to just, you know, kind of work on that third goal of being a window into, you know, especially rural Costa Rica, maybe a certain sense of Costa Rica that many people don't see, and share that with my friends and family. There's so many different things that you can do, and a lot of different programs and organizations that work closely with Peace Corps to offer grants and different resources to the communities that we work in. So where can you serve? We are all over the world, and I believe there's 1 or 2 countries on here that we're paused our service in. Well, all of them are paused right now. So in about 61 different countries. If you're interested in serving in Latin America, you do have to have minimal, I think it is about 2 semesters of Spanish at the college level, and then a few countries in Africa require 2 semesters of French or a Romance language, but for the most part, the majority of these countries do not have a language requirement, which is awesome. So you're going to get 3 months of training in the country that you're working in before you start your 2-year service. That gives you cultural training, language training, security and program training. So you do, before you even enter your community, get a foundation for the language that will help you be successful and communicate. So safety and health, it's our biggest priority, as you could probably guess, since we evacuated all of our volunteers last month due to COVID-19. We want to ensure all of our volunteers are safe throughout their 2 years of service. You're going to get so much training during the first 3 months that are going to allow you to mitigate any risks that come naturally from living abroad in a different country. And in addition to that, you know, you get house inspections, you get individualized safety and security plans. So from my personal perspective, I always felt very safe in my community, and like I had was given the right tools to be safe and mitigate any risks from living abroad. Benefits during service are pretty awesome. I myself studied abroad and know that, experiences like volunteering abroad, studying abroad can sometimes be expensive. So Peace Corps covers everything. Your flight to and from the country is going to be covered. You get a living and housing stipend, full medical and dental coverage. There's student loan deferment options. If you have student loans that are public, the most of the time they are going to defer until you finish your service, and some of the private ones will as well. And every month you get 2 vacation days, which you can take to come home and visit friends and family, use to travel in the country that you're working in, and even use those days to visit other countries around the world. And during those first 3 months and throughout your 2 years of service, you're going to get career skills and training that are going to be kind of help you build your resume and ensure that your service is a meanwhile and kind of professional development opportunity for you to show off on your resume. Benefits after serving: every volunteer that completes the 2 years will get the $10,000 in transition funds. That's your money to use however you want. Those funds are generally to help you acclimate back to your life at home or wherever you want to end up after Peace Corps. There's fellowship opportunities with graduate schools throughout the U.S. that will give you reduced tuition. You get professional network and career services. While you're finishing up, there are people that will help you review your resume. There's a Return Peace Corps volunteer job page that has employers that are looking for Return Peace Corps volunteers to work for them. You get 12 months of federal employee hiring privilege, which is a really great perk if you're at all interested in working for the federal government. Public service loan forgiveness, that's for people who are working in public positions for, I think it's 10 or 12 years. And then access to affordable health insurance for a few months after you complete your service. So applying to Peace Corps, different from a few years ago, the application is actually really, really easy, and you can get through it pretty quickly. So your first step is going to be to visit the Peace Corps website and browse some of the position openings. There's 2 different paths for applying for a Peace Corps position. The first path is to apply directly to a position. So say you're studying French and you're majoring in horticulture and you have, experience working on farms or in a community garden. That would make you a competitive applicant for the agriculture position. And you could apply directly to an agriculture-related position in a French-speaking country where you would be competitive not only with the skills and the education that you have, but also the language skills that you have. If you aren't necessarily trying to expand on a language or you don't have a language, second language experience, like I mentioned, there's plenty of positions in countries that don't have a language requirements, and you can apply directly to one of those, or you can apply to our application called Serve Where Needed Most, which will allow a placement officer to fit you with a position that is going to be, a good fit with your skills and that needs volunteers. After you submit your application, you're going to fill out, it's about 100-question health history form that basically just allows us to make sure that we're fitting you with a country that can accommodate any medical needs that you have. After you submit that, it might be a bit of a waiting game until you hear if you'll get an interview, and then you'll interview with a placement specialist over Skype for Business. Again, another kind of waiting period until you hear if you receive an invitation or not. You have about 3 days to receive your invitation, and then you start the medical and legal clearance process, some online trainings, and then you'll leave. So every position you see on the website will have a departure date, and that is the date that you would be, for example, leaving your house to go to, the Denver airport and flying to meet the rest of your group and doing one night of staging and then leave for your country altogether. So the application timing is, we have 4 different batches of positions that we have on the website throughout the year. And for students that are, graduated right now, now is a great time to apply. The next upcoming application deadline is July 1st. And for students that might be graduating in May or the spring, applying to the October 1 or January 1 deadline can allow you to lie up your departure date with your graduation date. So applying early, all of these positions are listed on the website 5 months before their deadline. So you have plenty of time to review them, talk with me, review your resume, work on your application materials, and then submit. Applying early can be a huge advantage as applications are reviewed on a rolling basis. And, if you are going to apply to a specific position, make sure you tailor your resume to that position. Furthermore, make sure you're tailoring your resume to Peace Corps in general, as you should with any job that you might be applying to. If you see a job that interests you and it has an orange box next to it, that is called a featured job. Oftentimes it can be difficult to fill for a variety of reasons. They might be a bigger group. The qualifications might be a little challenging to find certain people that meet those qualifications. So those are always good positions to apply to if they interest you. So being a competitive applicant, having relevant education or experience can be really helpful, but that doesn't mean if you're majoring in sociology or criminal justice and you might feel like, hey, one of those positions and one of those sectors doesn't necessarily align with that, what should I do? That's not a problem. There are positions for everyone. And, the chances are if you don't have a ton of work experience outside of school, you're going to be wanting to have that flexibility, apply to serve where needed most, and allow a placement officer to match you with a program that needs volunteers. Having volunteerism and community involvement can be great and really speak to your character. For us, especially as a federal agency, we consider volunteer experience just as valuable as a paid position. So we tell people, hey, if your resume is 2 to 3 pages, that's totally fine. We want to see your work experience, your volunteer experience, any extracurriculars you're involved in. Put that all on there. That's all great experience, especially for people coming right out of college. Have a tailored resume, tailor it, review some of those Peace Corps positions, and pull some of the language and the verbs that you might feel that are, related to a job that you worked at. Do your research, connect with me as a recruiter. I'm more than happy to review any resume and work through any questions or positions that you might be interested in. And of course, avoiding common mistakes on your application. Have the Career Center review your resume, friends and family take a look at a motivation statement that you have to write to about 500 words and speaks to your motivation for wanting to serve in the Peace Corps. Always good to get as many eyes on those application materials as you can. And lastly, why choose the Peace Corps? I know there are so many different programs to choose from, and to a lot of people, 2 years can sound like a long time, but I promise it goes by really quickly. Peace Corps, different from a lot of short-term programs, takes a very sustainable and long-lasting approach to the work that we do. I fully believe and stand behind the impact of Peace Corps volunteers in their communities abroad. You are immersing yourself in a new culture and the community that you're working with, and not going there to dictate or tell people what to do. You want to be working side by side with people. All projects and all initiatives should really have community investments. like I was talking about that grant that we did, the community needed to contribute 25%, for example. So whether that's materials or labor, Peace Corps really wants to see that this project is supported by the community so that when you finish your service, everything can continue smoothly and everything can continue and live on without you being there. Peace Corps, you know, not only are you going to be building relationships with the people in your community, I still chat with my host mom, but you're going to have relationships that you build with the other volunteers in your group and in your country that really share similar worldviews and values of giving back to the community. And, you know, above all of this too, it's going to be a very, you know, special and rewarding experience for you to give back to your community abroad, work with people from a different background, and really grow personally and professionally. So yeah, any questions? I know that was a lot of information that we went through pretty quickly.
I know you mentioned that you were living with the host family. Is that like a standard living situation? Or what's the typical living situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So every country is different, and so during your first 3 months of training, wherever you are, you're going to be living with a host family, and that's because those 3 months are really important for you to get a foundation of cultural knowledge and the language. So you're going to be living with a host family, but really in class and in workshops and trainings from, you know, 8 to 4 or 5 most of the day. So everyone will live with a host family during those first 3 months. After that, it depends on the country. Costa Rica was, you had to live with a host family for 6 months. A lot of other countries don't have any requirements. Some less than more have a requirement of the whole time. And if you're looking on the website at a position, I can just pull it up here quick. You can see at the bottom, it will show you what the living conditions are and how long you would be needing to live with the host family.
Okay. I'm also majoring in criminal justice. It's not necessarily something I want to do after I graduate, but what would you recommend I do with that degree as far as applying for Peace Corps?
Yeah, so I always tell people to, you know, be as flexible as you're willing to be. If you're not willing to go anywhere, don't say you would want to go anywhere, and that's not frowned upon by any means. So something to consider. If you do decide to serve where needed most, in the application, you can also rank what programs you might be interested in and what geographic areas you have a preference for. That being said, I would, you know, love to hear more about what you might be doing outside of school. So, for example, you're majoring in criminal justice, but if you have a part-time job at the Boys and Girls Club or working with youth or children, then I would say you could apply for youth and development. Or if you know, work at a community health center, you could qualify for a few health positions. But you know, if you don't have a specific work experience, then I would encourage you to serve where needed most and then elaborate on your preference within that application.
Okay. I also have a business minor, and I'm currently working on campus with students, like teaching them new study techniques and time management skills and stuff like that.
Okay, that's really good experience. Then, you know, I would say to browse some of the positions that are open. Working with students like that could, you know, qualify you for some of the community economic development positions. Certainly the education sector, since you have some of that more kind of tutoring related experience, but I'm happy to take a look at your resume and give you some more specific feedback.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.